Hi, everybody. My name is Josh. Great to see you this morning. Reach down around you, grab your program and a pen. We're getting ready to dive into a brand new series called This Is My Story. If we haven't met yet, I'm so glad you're here at church today. If you have been to JHM before, welcome back. I know some of you are very relieved because we just finished our series on dating, guys, girls, relationships, family drama, and you're like, anything except more of those awkward conversations. The good news is, for the next 4 weeks, we're talking about your story. Our whole culture is built on stories. How many of you have ever heard a great story from your grandparents? Your grandparents have told you a great story. Good. Awesome. How many of you have ever heard that same story again later from your grandparents because they forgot they told you before? Okay, good. Our whole culture has been built on this oral tradition of telling stories from one generation to the next. Now, things have evolved a little bit since then, and while you may have heard since your grandparents telling you stories, there's also stories that you tell via your phone or via the written word. In fact, my father-in-law was just here this past week, and he was telling us some of the stories from when he was a young man, when he was drafted into the military. He didn't have a choice, is what that means, to fight in a war in Vietnam. And it was a crazy story. And he talked about the medals that he won. And there's actually an award for him in his squadron. He was a crew chief on it. The story, he doesn't talk about that time of his life very much, but the stories were incredible. Well, everybody here has a story, and I'm excited to bring to you the three greatest stories of all time. The first one came out in movie theaters this summer, and it was the most incredible movie you've ever seen. It's about a cat who had 9 lives, but 8 of them were used up. Did you guys see the movie Puss in Boots? It's amazing. It's legendary. If you haven't seen it yet, it's coming streaming to somewhere very soon. But I brought a clip of this movie, but we're not going to play it. We're not going to play it because I'm going to give you another option. What if, when you were growing up like me, you wanted to be a fighter pilot? You would give anything to shoot missiles at the bad guys, and you wanted it, but you joined the Air Force, and then they said, listen, you're too big to fit into the cockpit of a fighter jet. And then you were like, your heart was broken, and you said, I quit. That was me. But this summer, I got to see a great movie called Top Gun, and there's missiles and bad guys and flying around. It's so good. One of the greatest movies in the history of the world. And finally, the third most amazing story just made $2 kajillion with a K dollars at the box office. $2 kajillion. Does anybody know the name of this movie? Avatar 2, very good. That's correct. Avatar 2, which is basically blue people not wearing very much clothing on seahorses that look like hummingbirds. It's an amazing movie in theaters now. This concept of story is really important in our culture. Those are just 3 examples of the stories. In fact, I did bring a clip from each of these films, but I need to know which clip we should watch. Should we watch Avatar? Okay, 0 votes. 0. I mean, 0. There wasn't even like a jokes to nobody. Like, nah, can't even really. Okay, how about Top Gun? You want to see Top Gun? Okay, 7, 8, 12. Not bad, not bad. That's good. How about the greatest movie of all time, Puss in Boots? Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Some of you are like, we're in. Now you wish you'd voted for Avatar. It's too late. Here's a clip from the greatest story of your generation, Puss in Boots.
I never do this, but can I get your autograph? Been following you for a long time. Sign right there.
Puss in Boots laughs in the face of death. Bounty hunter.
So I've heard.
You will find your reward does not come easily. This I tell you.
Everyone thinks they'll be the one to defeat me. But no one's escaped me yet.
All right, let's get it over with. Fear me if you dare.
Oh, it's a good movie. It's got a great story. If you've never seen it, today's service is brought to you by Puss in Boots or Disney Plus, the new Mandalorian, available now, $7.99 a month. So good. So good. Here's the deal. First fill in your notes. Grab your notes. Here it is, your first fill in. Everyone has a story. You are living a story. You might be in the first few chapters of your story. I might be a few chapters in right now. But everyone has a story. And I'm so excited because through the course of this series, you're going to hear from students and leaders who are going to share their story with you about how Jesus has changed their life. One of the stories I want you to hear right away today is from a girl in our youth ministry. She's in 8th grade. Her name is Bryn. And if you want to share your story like her, we'd love to hear from you or maybe have you on the next episode of the Inside Out show that we do on Instagram. But here's Bryn's story. Check this out.
Hi, I'm Bryn Beery, and this is my story. I started coming to Mariners when I was in the bubble room, in the kids' room, and it was ages where I couldn't even talk yet. I remember going to VBS camps, and I remember my leaders always being a really big role model to me. I decided to get baptized at the end of VBS in the summer of 2015 when I was going into my year of first grade. I continued to go to church and learn more about Jesus and the Bible, and I remember going to the kids building every weekend. When March 2020 came up, I definitely felt my life began to change. I lost faith in the Lord and all my trust was completely gone. I felt like no one really was around there to help me, and I had no one really to talk to. And at such a young age, I don't think I really fully know what Jesus had planned for me or any deeper details about the Bible. But I remember when the pandemic started to end around January 2022, I had a friend reach out to my sister about coming back to Mariners Church in person after not going at all for 2020 and 2021. And so we showed up for the first time in a really long time. And I remember meeting Josh, and he told us to go sit down and watch the service. And he was very welcoming to me and my sister. I know I felt nervous the first time coming back because everything had changed and I knew no one. But it was really like a shock to me that I felt like I was at home and church was my place. A couple months passed and I continued going to church and meeting friends that I had made through time. I remember starting life groups and I met my leaders, Sarah and Michelle. They were a big help to me in making more friends at this church and becoming more part of the community. I also started serving in tech and started worshiping, and that really put a big impact on my life, and I met a lot of new friends, and Jesus really started to become my main priority. I still continue to go to life groups, and I'm still building my community, and I'm really thankful I know who Jesus is. I'm Bryn, and this is my story.
So good. Thank you, Bryn. That was awesome. Hey, I want to tell you a little bit about my story. In your program, I wrote Josh's story, and then I actually put a little part for you, too. And so it just says Blank's story, so write your name in there. Here's a little bit of my story. I'm going to put some of my stats up on the screen. Here it is, Josh's story. First thing, I have had 6 broken arms in my life. How many of you have ever broken a bone before? Broken a bone? Very good. Okay, I'm not alone in this. Some daredevils in the room. I like it. I broke my left arm 4 times growing up. I broke my right arm, both bones at the same time. It was so painful. Some of you are like, are you fragile? Apparently I am, very fragile. The first one was I rode my bicycle over my dog, and the dog's fine. But I fell off and broke my arm. The second one was I tripped on some broken concrete and broke my arm. Third one was go-karting, I think it was. And the fourth one was, this was a good one. They lifted me up onto this horse. The horse is like, I really don't want to lift this guy. But they lifted me up onto the horse, and I went right over the horse and down the other side, broke my arm. Had to go to the hospital. It was crazy. I had 6 broken bones. I had 24 stitches in my body. I have stitches in my stomach, stitches in my knee, stitches in my chin, stitches in my head. I'm basically been put back together with thread over the time that I was growing up. There was a moment in my childhood where I said, I believe, where I followed Jesus. I was with my parents in our house, and they were talking about Jesus and how he's the Savior of the world and he could forgive our sins. And there was a moment where I said, I believe. I was baptized at age 11. Some of you are in here and you're 11, 12 years old, whatever. I was baptized at that point. In our church, you had a tradition where you had to come up and you had to say your name. So my real name is Josh Griffin. And I got up in front of the whole church. There's like 300 people there. And I said, my name is Jeremiah Griffin, my brother's name. I don't know what I was thinking. And I said the wrong name, and the whole church laughed at me. And so I ran away. But they eventually found me hiding in a broom closet, and they put water on me, and whatever. I got baptized. Okay, so here's the deal. I was baptized at age 11. I became a follower of Jesus. I had my appendix removed at my last year of high school. They said, you're going to have a tiny little scar on your body when you're done. It's just a little scar, less than 1 inch. It's going to be okay, but your appendix is going to get ready to burst. We got to get it out of there. So I go in. I wake up a couple hours later. I have like an 8-inch scar on my stomach, and they said, your appendix burst when we started surgery, and we just cut you open because you got to clean that out. Otherwise, it can kill you. It can poison your body. And I knew in that moment that my modeling career was over. And so this sweet body never got to be the supermodel that I know I was destined to be. Whatever. I had my appendix out when I was 18 years old. I am married for 26 years. I have 4 kids, and I have visited all 50 states. That is my story. How many of you have never been outside of California? You've never even been outside of California. There's always a couple. That's okay. How many of you have never been on an airplane before? Have you never been on it? Oh, it was awesome. If you don't remember it, it does not count. So you've never been on an airplane? That's awesome. So you will soon. It'll be great. Here's the deal. I actually was at the Laker game on Friday night, and I met someone from Alaska. That was the 50th state that I visited. Was Alaska the 50th state? Anybody know? Was it 49? Yeah, Hawaii, somewhere. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Here's the deal. Now we're going to play this game with you. This is my story. Here's some of your story. How many broken bones have you had? Anybody here had, what's your best broken bone story here? What have you broken? What have you broken? You were dancing and broke a foot? Now that's some serious dancing. Good. What do you got? Yes. Oh my goodness. Bounce house trauma right there. Last one. What do you got? Yes, ma'am. Oh my goodness, that's brutal, and I like it. I want more details of your broken bones after church. How many days have you been suspended from school? 0-ish. I see some, some are like, 3. All right, good. All right, put your own number down. That's okay. How many days have you spent at Disneyland? Has anyone ever gone like a lot? Like, who's been the most? 5 or more times? 10. Every week? How many of you... How about this? Anybody ever been to Disney World? Disney World. Wow, you guys, you're so spoiled. All right, what grade were you when you got your phone? Some of you are like, I still don't have a phone. My parents hate me. They don't hate you. They're just trying to protect you from the dark side, all right? You have your phone with you. Very good. 4th grade, 7th grade, 2nd grade? Your parents that's not okay. I got my first phone when I was 28 years old. You got it in 2nd grade? Oh, my goodness. All right. Here we go. Is there a moment in your story where you said, I believe? Now, maybe you're here and you're like, I don't know if I believe yet. Or I have doubts or I have questions or whatever. Is there a moment where you said, I believe, I follow Jesus with my life? Have you been baptized before? And write the number of states that you have visited on there as well. Or if it's 1, because you were born in California, then you could just do that as well. Here's the deal. Your story is incredibly important. And everybody's story is totally unique. This is just a few of the highlights of my story. But I want you to know this. Write this down in your notes too. Everything changes in your story when you say, I believe in Jesus. When you follow Jesus, there's a transformation, a change that takes place, Thomas. It's awesome. There's nothing better, Raul. There's nothing better when your life is changed because of Jesus. And so I want to challenge you. Do you have a moment in your life where you said, yeah, I believe? There's a guy in the Bible. His name is Paul. It's a little complicated because his actual first name is Saul, and then it becomes Paul. He used to go around killing Christians. He would kill Christians for fun. He'd put them in jail or he'd have them killed. And one day, there was a moment where he said, I believe, because Jesus appeared to him on the road and said, I want you to follow me. And Saul, who became Paul, did. In fact, Paul went on to write almost all of the New Testament. He wrote more than half of the second half of your Bible. And in his story, everything changed when he said, I believe. Now, Paul's story actually took some twists and turns. And I want to read you a part of his life from Acts chapter 26. I put it in your notes. It'll be on the screen too. And this is a moment where Paul is actually in prison. He's in prison because he went from torturing Christians to becoming one. And he's standing in like a law and order type of environment. He's like in a courthouse. He's in handcuffs. And he's standing before the king and the rulers and judges. And he says this. He starts to share his story. He says this, the Messiah would suffer and be the first to rise from the dead. He said, this is the good news that I believe. And in this way announce God's light to the Jews and the rest of the world. The king, Agrippa is his name, the king interrupted him and said, do you think you can persuade me to become a Christian so quickly? In fact, some translations say, do you think that I'm ready to become a Christian because of your story? And Paul answers and says this, in the rest of the passage, verse 29, Paul replied, whether quickly or not, King Agrippa, I pray to God that both you and everyone here in this audience might become the same as I am, a follower of Jesus, someone who said, I believe, except I'm in chains. I'm in prison for what I believe. Now, here's what I want you to know. Your story just might help change somebody else's story. In fact, write this down in your notes. I'll put this on the screen because it's an important thing to remember. Paul shared his story, and it challenged King Agrippa. And King Agrippa was this close to becoming a Christian. In fact, the history books tell us that he didn't believe, and the kingdom eventually fell. And he was so close because he had heard Paul's story and Paul's testimony. Now, here's what I want you to know. When you share your story of becoming a follower of Jesus, and everybody's story has its own unique angles and moments and facts about you, but when you share your story, it could just change someone else's lives too. You never know. Here's what it says in 1 Chronicles. Grab your pen because I want you to underline part of this verse. 1 Chronicles 16:8. It says, give thanks to the Lord, and here's what I want you to underline. Proclaim his greatness. Underline that. Proclaim his greatness. Let the whole world know what he's done. And when you share your story, something incredible happens, and you introduce Jesus to them as well. I was talking to a student last service, and he's like, yeah, my family doesn't believe and follow Jesus, but he's going to be a light to that family. As I was talking to another student, people at my school, they don't follow Jesus. You can share your story and share the light of Jesus with them. You can proclaim his greatness in everything that you do. Now, here's the deal. My story isn't all perfect. In fact, if you've been around JHM before, you know that one of the defining moments in my personal story is when I was in 8th grade going into my 9th grade year, which many of you are in that time right now. And my mom was diagnosed with a terminal illness. They said she was going to die. And we moved, and all hope was lost in my family. It was one of the most difficult times of my whole childhood. Now, here's the deal. You might be here, and you might be like, I am not in an easy chapter of my life right now. Parents getting divorced. Maybe you just had to move. I don't know what your story is. Grandpa passed away, whatever. You got something cooking, and you're like, this is not a page that I'm excited to be writing in my story. This is a chapter that I cannot wait to get past. Here's what I want you to know. Let me come to you from the future, because you're whatever, 12, 14, I don't know, whatever you are. And I'm old. I'm 48. Let me come to you from the future with this principle, and I want you to write it down too. We may not know now, we may not now understand all of the twists and turns in our story. Your story, man, I wish when you became a follower of Jesus that everything was like perfect and we're just dancing in the flowers, skipping through life, and there's butterflies, and yay. That's not how it works. But I know this, that no matter what are the twists and turns of my story, and I've lived this and I know it to be true, we can trust that God is in control. The Bible says he's your rock, your defender, your shield. He holds you in his hand, that no matter what happens in your story, all the twists and turns and craziness that is ahead, you can always be confident that God is in control. I wrote it this way in your notes as a one last thought. The one last thought is simply this: the greatest story ever told is the story of Jesus. In fact, if you were to put the greatest story ever told into Google, it would tell you that Jesus is the greatest story of all time, that he was the Son of God who saved the world. It has been known as a story passed down for 2,000 years. It's the greatest story ever told. But the second greatest story ever told is when you meet Jesus. Through the course of this series, you're going to hear from students and leaders who've met Jesus just like Paul, and their life was changed. I'm excited for you to share your story as well. In fact, to help you, we have a brand new tool that's called True Stories. And it's a simple workbook to help you work through. It's got a few words and some spots for you to write stuff down. There's llamas in it because we love llamas here. It's a chance for you to write down your story. And during your table discussion group today, your leaders will have these. If you want one, it's free. Just take it, and it'll help you write out your story of following Jesus as well. Now, I know there's a little bit of insecurity when you go into your discussion groups. You're like, wait, we go to table groups? Here's what you need to know. 1, there's snacks at your group, which is awesome. 2, I'm going to tell you the questions ahead of time so you can be totally prepared to contribute something. And if you contribute one thing, then your leader will back off and not ask you for any more. So be thinking of your one thing to add to your conversation right now. Here's your questions that you're going to talk about today at your snack-filled table group. Here we are. Icebreaker: what is the craziest moment you've ever experienced? What is the scariest moment in your story so far? Or you can debate, is Puss in Boots or Top Gun or Avatar the best movie of all time? You can debate that as you start off your conversation. Second question: where are you at with Jesus? Are you a Christian? Are you not a Christian? Are you somewhere in the middle? Are you devoted? Well, I'd love for you to share kind of your story. It's been a fun conversation all weekend. What makes the story of Jesus, or also known as the gospel, so great? When have you shared your story with someone? If you haven't yet, who is someone that you can share your testimony with this week? And then leaders, I've asked them to share a little bit of their I believe moment as well as you close out your group time. It's going to be a great time and a great series. And I'm so glad you're here, especially to learn about a guy named Paul whose story changed a whole kingdom. You guys bow your heads and close your eyes, and then Elliot will come up and give us some instructions. All right. God, thank you for every student that is here this morning. Thank you for the chance that we have to get together, to laugh, play, worship, and also to be challenged about our faith in you. Thank you for the power of a changed life and the power of our stories as we continue sharing the gospel from generation to generation. And there are now thousands and millions and billions of Christians because of the stories that have been shared. We love you, Jesus. We ask all those things in your name. Amen.